Today I want you to grab a sketchbook or whatever paper you want to paint on. We're going to do a wintry but cheerful and bright holiday spread. In this one, I really want you to focus on just trying to let loose a bit. I don't want you to over perfect anything because some of the beautiful details are going to come in those places where you didn't really do much. I'm going to do it as a double page spread so that we can just get lots of this juicy fruit all around here. What we're going to start by doing is I like to always start by wetting my paints. And today I'm using my Dream palette. This is one that I built using a whole bunch of different brands. And so there's all sorts of different colors in here. You don't need any specific colors. We want to use the colors that call to us the most. Now in a big spread like this, what I usually like to do is start with the lightest color elements. And in this case, it's going to be our grapefruits or oranges. I'm going to leave them a little ambiguous, so we've got a little bit of that pinky color in there, but we also have lots of that bright orange, so it could really be either of them. Now I'm going to put a little water in one of these wells here. Also, I'm going to use one single brush for this whole thing. I'm just going to be using a size 3 quill brush. And I also have a trusty tester strip here just to make sure that I know what color I'm making. I'm going to start with a nice light orange color, and I'm just going to combine a couple different oranges. This is a vermilion, and this is kind of a more neon type orange color. I want something fairly light to start with so I can just kind of block in some of these areas. We're going to kind of be sketching a little bit just with the colors on. I kind of want to just sketch almost. I'm going to add a little yellow into this. I'm just going to be using the paint to sketch out what I'm going to be creating. Something light like this to start with. We'll be adding lots more colors as we go. If you wanted to, you could actually trace circles out onto this because we are going to be making circular shapes, but I'm just going to go for it because this one's not about perfection. It's just about loose and go with it. So I'm just going to start over here. And I think up in this corner, I'm going to block out where my first orange is going to be. And in that, I'm also going to start blocking in where those slices of this citrus are. They don't need to be perfect. See how simple that is. All right, I'm going to add in another one here. Let's go here. Very much not a perfect circle, and that's okay. Again, just kind of blocking in these areas. These are just going to kind of give us a guide for what we're going to be doing going forward. They don't need to be perfect. I think I'm going to do one that goes across this area. Right down here. I'm going to make another full one here. And you could have more or less of these if you wanted to. We're just blocking in these different shapes. I'm going to put another one right here. Again, I'm not going for perfection here. This is just kind of a fun, bright holiday scene. And the more colors that we add to this, the more it'll kind of build onto this. Now I want to have some more of these kind of coming off the page. I really love having these elements that kind of go off of the page because it kind of makes you wonder, what else is there? What else is over here? We need to add in some more ones here. I think maybe we need one that goes off the page, kind of real, just a little one here. I feel like I need one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh, I don't know. I've got a weird thing about numbers, so I will need to either leave it as it is or add 2. I'm going to add 2. Or do I want to add 2? Do I want there to be more pomegranates? No, I want to add 2. Okay, we're going to add one more here. And then where should we put our other one? I think I'm going to keep this area for the pomegranates and the greenery. Let's see. I think I'm going to bring another half one over here. Maybe just kind of poking out just a bit. Okay, we have the base of this blocked in. And now what I want to go back, and now that I've kind of decided where all these are going to be, is I'm going to go back in with some more bold colors. So I'm going to grab more just that vermilion. See how it's a lot more bold. It's not as bold as it can possibly get, but it's a lot more bold. And these haven't completely dried, but I'm going to kind of work on them in the direction that I went so that they're more or less dry, but they don't need to be perfectly dry. Okay, and I'm just going to, in a couple of these areas, let's just drop in a little of that color. Some of them I'm going to add in more, some I'm going to add in less. We're just adding some variation. I want you to get loose and not overthink this part. I might even start on some of these to hint to how these little wedges actually fit in here, and they are more like little wedges. Oh, we got a little hair here. These are all still wet. I want to transform this. I want to make this more into kind of a yellowy, peachy, light color. So I'm going to put some more yellow in here. And let's actually, I'm going to put up a little pink in there. I want a little more water and I want a little more yellow. Again, the colors don't matter so much. We're just going for some variation. See how that's a lot more yellow, a lot more peachy? Put some water in there. And now I'm going to kind of further define these shapes within here. We've started with some variation, but now we're going to kind of actually carve out where these individual little wedges go together. And you can leave a little white space. It will actually be a little more magical if you do leave a little white space in between these. Everything's still a little wet, and that's okay. Some of these might run together, and I am totally good with that because I want there to be some defined spots, but I want there also to be areas that kind of blend together in kind of these subtle ways, because that's kind of what it looks like in there. I'm not filling these in perfectly. I'm intentionally trying to make sure that I'm leaving some variation and being loose, but a little intentional about how I'm moving through these. Do you see how they already look way more like citrus than when we began? Making these kind of pie type shapes. And remember, fruits, even though they do have structure to them and some kind of rules about what make them their shapes, fruits are natural. Think about how many times you've opened an orange or a grapefruit, and inside of it you're like, hey, look, there's a really like a little tiny slice compared to the other slices. It happens all the time. We don't need them to be perfect because they're beautiful in their imperfections. And again, just filling these in each time I'm going through this to try to kind of keep them doing similar-ish things. I am kind of working in the order that I place these down so they all have about the same amount of time to soak in. Not exactly, but more or less. More than if I just went with whatever I wanted. Okay, I'm going to put a little more water in my brush. A tiny bit more yellow so we have an even lighter color. And now I'm just going to swoop that around the edge of these to kind of get that pith in there. It's okay if there's a little white space left, that's totally fine. You could come in there if you wanted to. I'm probably not going to, just because I feel like it adds an unnecessary amount of work. Okay. Now I want to take this super bright, I want the most vibrant color that we have made yet. This might be a little bit too vibrant, so I'm going to take a little of that vermilion just to kind of take out a little of the neon part, but I do want that super bright color. And I'm going to swipe around the very edge of what I just swiped around, and then also flick in just a couple areas to give a little bit more maybe definition in certain areas that need it, or just to bring a little more life to it. This is the hard part because you do have to be a little more careful because we want this right on the edges. And because that has soaked in a little bit but not totally, we'll get a soft bleed. to make that super vibrant skin of these oranges or grapefruits, really whatever you want them to be. I like keeping them a little ambiguous, just because it allows for more possibilities. I'm going to focus on, I guess, this part first. I did mention that I was going to add this in the interior, and I will. But just, I guess I'm doing this part first, and that's fine. I'm trying to be kind of careful, but also it's okay if they don't line up perfectly. This one's more about the mood of it all. Okay, I really like this one here. Some of these other ones I feel like are a little bit tighter or just kind of spread a little bit too much. So I'm going to use this to kind of define some of those segments a little bit more. See how that one came to life just a bit more? I'm going to kind of use that color to define certain parts of the segments where they need it. In a spread like this, I find that the more we build the narrative within this page, the more that these elements will all start to make sense together. See how I can just kind of quickly define these different areas by concentrating this color in certain areas, and you don't have to completely overwork it. They don't need to be perfect. None of these look like a perfect orange, and that's okay. We can build certain areas on top of these to kind of highlight or hide things, and I think that's just a wonderful thing. The one last thing I'm going to do to these, because I'm going to be using a whole bunch of this deep red color. I think this is a permanent red color. I'm going to put a little of this in my brush. I don't want a lot. I just want a little. Maybe I'll mix it in with some of that vermilion so it's a little bit warmer, not so cool. And I'm going to barely touch this in. I just want it to kind of come in to the other parts of this. And I'm going to mainly do this in some of these areas that are still a little wet. Just some little hints to this, because it will kind of all make this feel like it's part of one composition. If at any point you're like, that's a little bit too much, like over here, I can wash my brush and just put some soft water in there, and I can just kind of soften this out. It'll still be there, but it just won't be quite as in your face. like that. Okay, those are all good. I am going to take a second to dry these because the next element I don't want to interfere with everything that's going on here. It's not perfectly dry, but it's more or less dry. Now I want to mix up a decent amount, this will be easier just to spray this in here, of a nice vibrant red color. So I'm going to be taking some of this, I believe it's a permanent red color, mixing that in, but this is a little bit warm, a little purpley, so I am going to be making sure to add in some of that vermilion just to kind of bring it a little bit more towards the warm instead of the cool side. Adding in a little bit of each of these until I get a little more. I want a pretty vibrant color on this. There we go. Something like that. I also want to make sure that I can dip straight into those. And maybe some of that red too. And then I'm also going to be using the indigo as my highlight. Indigo is just a beautiful dark color. So we're going to be making these pomegranates. You can choose where you want your pomegranates to be. I think I want my first one to be tilted a little here. And I'm actually going to start by kind of defining that top part, just kind of flicking to make that top part. And then they come out. They're roundish, but they're also kind of octagonal or hexagonal. And depending on how big we want our pomegranates to be, I think I'm going to make mine about like this. A big pomegranate. It's going to kind of come down like that. Okay? Now I'm going to wash my brush really quick because I want on one side for there to be a lot more water so that we have more of a highlight. Then I'm going to fill in this area with that other color. Maybe drop in just some variation of some of these colors that we have in here just to get a little bit of some fun going on. Wash my brush, and now I'm going to grab some of that indigo, or purple would be beautiful, and I'm going to drop this kind of opposite the other side, and that really pushed into there. So I'm going to drop a little bit more here, and then I'm going to do something to kind of try to, first thing I'm going to do is hold this so that this goes this way a bit. I do want these to be loose, and I want them to just, I want the colors to do what they're going to do. But some of this is a little bit intense for me. So we're going to kind of scribble them together while things are still nice and wet. And then I might just kind of drop some of that other red in here just to make sure that we have a little smoother transition. Very simple pomegranate. I love pomegranates. They're one of my favorite fruits. All right, I think I want one. Now, it's going to be tempting to keep messing with it, but I'm just going to let that one be. And I want one that's kind of coming out but between some of these, but peeking out over here. So we're going to start with that vibrant red color we made. And I'm going to define its little spout. Or I guess this is kind of the flower area. It's going to come out and down. And I'm going to bring this right up to where these are. Bring that red color right in here. Wash my brush, and let's soften these over here. We're not being too careful. We're just dropping in some various colors. Let's add in some more of that kind of orangey color. Kind of preserving a little bit of that highlight. And now we're going to shadow again. I want variation. See, it's pushing. Pushing. I want you to give yourself permission to let just what happens happen here. If you wanted to get kind of fancy, sometimes they have these like points that stick out. You could lift a little here. I'm going to drop some more of that red into here. And then maybe a little more of this right here. Again, I'm going to let that one be. Let's do another one here. Here? How many pomegranates? Yeah, I want one that's just kind of popping out here and going behind. He's just going to sneak right behind this one. A little water in my brush. Soften. If I need to, I can lift. Let's grab some more of those other colors. Let's get those combined in here. And we're going to do a little more soft shadowing here. We don't need quite as much. Just a little soft shadowing. I'm also kind of hoping that where the water pools, we will get some interesting backgrounds and bleeds and things, because I think it'll just look really kind of fun. We're going to add the bottom, or maybe we're going to add the side of one here, and then the bottom of one here. Oops. Okay, so it's just going to come out and come in. Now, I want you to keep in mind that your placement of these should be dependent on where you place your other things. Just try to kind of fit them in where you feel like they belong. You get to decide. And drop a little water in here to encourage a bloom for the highlight. Get some variation. Maybe hint a tiny bit of shadow down here, just a tiny bit. Ooh, that was more than a tiny bit. I'm just trying to get vibrant colors here. And then one more, kind of the bottom of one here. Lots of vibrant colors. And there definitely would be shadow on this one. So let's put that right here. I feel like this one just needs a little, it's not quite where it would be, but it just needs a little something, you know? Okay, I've got our pomegranates in here. Our last thing is going to be our evergreen trees. Again, I don't want those to interfere with what we've got going on, but I feel like that's a good balance of the pomegranates against the oranges or the grapefruits. And I also love how simple it is to paint these, but just a few little things. I think I'm going to lift a little more highlight from this one. Just a little bit. Yes, that helped a lot. Sometimes you just got to go back and look at what's going on after things have started to kind of settle. We're going to get some interesting reactions here because there's water settling here, and I can't wait to see what it looks like. I'm going to let this dry naturally because I have this puddle here, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to add in those evergreen colors. I went and had lunch and I just let these things dry naturally, and it did exactly what I was hoping for. I know that a lot of times you want to avoid this, but I just love it. I love something about the movement of it. It makes it feel more rustic and natural, and I just love it. All right, our last step that we're going to do is we're going to be adding in some evergreen boughs. Now, this is really going to be all about fitting them in where we feel like there are spaces that need some filling, and also maybe some areas that we want to cover or kind of obscure. And we're just going to kind of add them in with lots of different greens. Since it's been a bit of time, I do need to give my colors another spritz, especially all these greens. And I will be using quite a bit of this one Van Dyke green because I mean, look at how beautiful that green is. So I'm going to put a little water here. I'm going to grab a little of this. And these evergreen boughs are pretty simple. We're really just going to kind of flick, 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 flick. So I think I want my first one to kind of come up. Maybe it's going to come up from behind this one. So let's kind of define where it's going to go in general. So it's going to kind of follow here and go there. So I'm going to grab this color. I'm just going to kind of flick, 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 flick. Now I'm only going to really flick on this one side because it would be going behind there. But the magic that we can add into these is adding in some other colors. Like, let's take a yellow-green color. Let's flick some of that in there. Maybe even some of this green gold. This is a lovely kind of push effect. This is Daniel Smith's green gold. Real simple. If you wanted to get extra fancy with it, you could grab some of that darker color, maybe a little bit of that indigo, and drop that in just a couple places to add in a bit more shadows. And now we're just going to kind of put that around here. I feel like I need another one that kind of comes up this way. I'm not really going to be washing my brush hardly at all during this part of the process, because I'm just going to move between these different colors. We're just flicking. Change up the color a bit to give it a little more depth. I'm going to grab some of that green gold. Also a little bit of this more matte one. Now just up close so you can see there's all these real subtle differences in the color that kind of bring these to life more than just using one single color. You don't have to use any specific colors to achieve this. The goal though is to just get some variation. So use what greens you have, and we're just working through these to kind of fill in these areas. See how this part here, if we were to frame it, already feels a little bit more complete. Now on the flip side here, this one, I don't love this one as much. I like these other ones a little bit more, and I want a big bow to come in here. So I might actually have it come up and obscure this one just a bit. Because this is a fairly light color, if I use dark enough colors here, I will be able to cover it. Try not to overthink the flicking, just let it kind of center out. Change the color. And then some of these boughs, you could actually have them have little like offshoots. So sometimes the evergreen kind of, it branches off in one direction. So maybe we give it a little branch off. Okay, I am going to speed the rest of this up. I've been trying to keep this in real time as much as I can, but there's not much more I can say than just continue flicking and adding these in. I will leave this all in here so you can see as I do it, just majorly sped up, so that you can see where I decide to place things. I think I'm gonna leave mine just like that. I love how all of those greens just really kind of bring everything together. I just love how all those greens really bring everything together. It just is, this is so fun and festive. And I really enjoy doing exercises like this or little paintings and spreads in my sketchbook because when I open them up, they just make me feel so happy. I would love this as a wrapping paper. I hope everybody has a really cozy holiday winter season, and I'm curious to know, what's your favorite winter fruit? These are two of my faves. I love grapefruits and I love pomegranates.